My name is Valli Batchelor, and I come from Australia at this stage, and I'm working at universities in Australia, and I'm also working with various NGOs in multiculturalism. Today I'm married to an Australian scientist of English origin, and I'm a mother of 3 children, and also an international choreographer of multicultural dance, whereby I use dance as a method or a way to gain access to marginalized women in different countries. Right now, as you're aware, I'm part of the delegation of the World Council of Churches to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. And this year, the theme of the commission is financing for gender equities. I would be using my background from academia and industry in the banking and finance sector to advocate for mobilization of funds towards promoting gender justice and financing the less developed countries. I think the majority of the population of less developed countries come from a line whereby banks are unable to service. And these people who are very much in need of finances are unable to access this form of finances. So to a large degree, I feel the rich tend to become richer, and the poor who are needing these funds are unable to access these funds. I feel that is a violation within itself. It may not be done consciously. Having said that, the structural violation is still evident enough to re-victimize people and to infringe the human rights of a person. I've also had the opportunity to specialize in Islamic banking. It started off from my interest in what the faiths was speaking about money and interest, and the story of Jesus where he got angry with the money changers. I did a study on usury and the Judeo-Christian perspective on money lending and how it affects people, and the Reformation on some countries. I've been advocating Islamic banking as a form of distribution of wealth because of 3 salient features of Islamic banking. On the surface, it may be similar to conventional banking, but it applies the principles of Sharia law, in particular for the prohibition of interest in the investments throughout the transactions, and secondly, the sharing of profit and loss, where an investor with excess money would come in, a person with excess money would come in as an investor rather than a depositor, and the entrepreneur would be the person who needs the money, and they work together as a business, and the profits would be shared between them. If the bank is the intermediary, the bank would be entering into that transaction with the person with excessive funds, and then venture into an investment with the person needing the money. So that's the second feature, the profit and loss sharing. And thirdly, also the prohibition of investments that are considered unlawful. In the Muslim law, this include gambling, pornography, and various other areas which I feel can contribute towards the eradication or elimination of violence against women. It also includes alcohol and various other avenues of investment. I feel if we can channel this framework to a larger global scale, we'll be able to mobilize funds from the developed countries with excess. We're able to transfer the excess funds to less developing countries and benefit from the overall profits that are generated, be it tangible and measurable, or be it more intrinsic and value adding. I'd like to touch a little bit about the background that I was raised in. It was a multicultural and a multi-religious background where I traversed cultures and languages on a daily basis. I was also aware of the challenges that my migrant parents faced in overcoming adversities, such as discrimination towards poverty, racial background, and the lack of education or an inability to speak English language, which they considered was the language of economic value. My father, who had worked extremely hard to raise quite a bit of wealth in a country that he migrated to, had lost almost all of it because of his, according to him, because of his illiteracy. But in actual fact, because he was unable to formulate the documentation in English. And my mother was an absolutely wonderful person in terms of encouraging us, became physically incapacitated with a stroke, and in spite of that, she persisted to motivate me and my 5 siblings to pursue knowledge. And she also taught me to dance when faced with adversities. And I noticed that in retrospect, they've both passed away. I realized that the element that kept them going was their faith. When I went off to Australia in a pursuit to widen my knowledge and to study for my degrees, I also was exposed to Christianity. And what was most liberating was my understanding of Jesus. And it related also vastly to the comfort that I gained from the stories that my father used to tell me about Jesus. And I found that he was consistently working towards the human rights and dignity of women and children and the marginalized. And in a country which was new to me 18 years ago, I found this rather liberating. I was involved in the post-Boxing Day tsunami experience, where I chose to go out to Sri Lanka, to the southern part of Sri Lanka, which was badly hit by the tsunami. It was called the Gold Coast, and I went as a Christian, passionately wanting to do some mission work. So at that point I met a fisherman who had lost the whole fishing village. He was the head of the fishing village for decades, and we just met up with him by chance, and we got someone translating for us, and he was left with his mother-in-law. His 5 children and his wife were washed away by the tsunami. He was a Sinhalese man in my understanding, and his words, which totally inspired me, was that he said, "I will be a Christian, a Buddhist, or a Muslim, as long as I can restore the dignity and bring back hope to those who remain alive around me." That words was really entrenched into me, and it changed my way of seeing Christian mission work. Just one more thing, in that experience, in that event, before I went back, I met an American lady of Dutch background, whose son was telling me about the story of her son, who was a medical intern out there in Sri Lanka at that time. He had helped with stitching up some people with very basic needle and thread to keep them going post-tsunami, and they're waiting for appliances to come because people were dying because of infection, and they were really in need, and he went on working. And after several weeks they received boxes, and apparently he had opened several boxes and he had a breakdown. I think it was after the 7th box, because they were all filled with Bibles. And I was hearing the words from the mother, and it really turned my perspective of Christian-based mission work. I feel there's wonderful work done by the churches, extremely powerful, but I feel that we should not be dictating to another faith, another culture. We should try to go down there and find what their needs are. Well, I believe that the main aim of churches are to put the teachings of Jesus in practice. And in my understanding, in my research of the life of Jesus, he has been advocating for human rights. He valued the dignity of women and children and marginalized people. I hear that he said he's come for these people, and he even challenged the authorities. He worked towards empowering the marginalized and women and children, and he actually put his words to practice. I strongly believe that the responsibility of churches are to make a stand, to take a consciously strong stand on human rights, and not just to work for people within the church structure of the Christian faith, but to extend beyond that, and to put to practice the teachings of Jesus.